Darian Fenton.
Mr Speaker, well, I'm a bit unhappy about having to address another bill attacking workers' rights all in one day, but however, you know, that's the agenda of this government, you know, and we understand that that's what they're doing. They've made their intentions very clear, and I think this is just the beginning, actually, of what we're going to see from that minister. She hasn't been able to deny a whole lot of things, including undermining or changing the Minimum Wage Act, and so I think we can look forward to a whole lot more. To everybody listening out there, I hope that they understand that today we have debated the Employment Relations Bill, and it's still got another reading to go, but that does away with workers' rights in their first 90 days of employment and restricts access to advice from union representatives in the workplace. That's what number one today. Number two, what we're doing now is debating the selling of a fourth week's annual leave, making it possible for employers to decide when alternative holidays may be taken, and making workers go and get a sick note after one day's sickness. And I want to address the matter of choice that the previous speaker just went into, because let's be clear about the choice that's being offered here with the fourth week's annual leave. Now, I'm absolutely, totally opposed to it, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But actually, the only choice that is being given under this bill to workers is to ask, to go down on their knees and ask permission from their employer to cash up their annual leave. Now, who gets to decide if they get the cash or not? The employer does. Oh, yeah. Well, the employer does. Now, that's not a choice. What's the choice? Where's the choice in that? Now, you know, I mean, the Minister said everyone's incredibly happy about it. Well, I must say, I think that once workers, and workers are only going to take this up because they haven't had a pay rise, but, you know, that once workers understand that the choice is all on the employer's side and they've been conned, I don't think they're going to be that happy. The other part of the bill, the other choice in the bill is to have your employer decide when you take a public holiday. That's right. So a worker works on a public holiday when everybody else has got the day off with their families, and then they become entitled to an alternative day. Now, under current law, the worker gets to decide when they would like to take that alternate day, and they get a period of time, I think it's a year, 12 months, and then after that, if they can't reach agreement, the employer can decide. Under this bill, the employer gets to decide almost immediately. And so the difficulty with that is that for workers who have to work on Christmas Day, for example, because they're not going to really get any say, they're not going to get any choice about when they have the alternative day off. Many workers are going to be enjoying their Christmas Day the following Thursday or Friday when their family, when their husband and their partner is back at work and their kids have gone off on holiday to the beach somewhere. So there's no choice there either. And I think the last choice matter I want to address is the choice that this bill gives employers to demand a sick note for illness on the first day of absence due to sickness. Isn't it great? Really, really good. A choice to drag a child out of bed and drag them off the...
How much does it cost to go to the doctor?
Well, quite a lot, but I mean, it does. I mean, to be fair, the bill does provide the employer pays them reasonable cost, and there's a real, it doesn't include the cost of having to find a babysitter to look after the other kids. It doesn't include the cost of having to drive down to the doctors. It doesn't include the time you lose from your job while you're waiting at the doctors. No, the doctors don't want that, and that choice hasn't been offered to the doctors. Now, going back to the Select Committee process, Mr Speaker, yes, well, I was indeed a member of the Select Committee, and I just want to recall that it wasn't a fair process, and it's not a fair process that such a substantive issue that affects every worker in New Zealand is being rushed through under urgency yet again. And submitters had 3 weeks to make submissions on this bill, along with the other bill alongside it, the Employment Relations Amendment Bill. The biggest changes to workers' conditions, to the conditions and terms and conditions of workers the biggest attack on them actually since the 1990s, huge change that affects every single worker in the country, every single wage and salary earner, from those who earn very little to those who earn a lot. So you would have thought One would have thought, Mr Speaker, that actually people would be given a bit more time to make submissions. And we did have not hundreds of submissions, as the Minister said, we actually had thousands. There were thousands and thousands of submissions. And the key things in the Holidays Act that people objected to were those three things: the 4th week's annual leave being up for grabs, the thing about the alternative holidays, the employer being able to make a choice about when you actually get to take your public holiday, and the sick leave provision. If we go back to the 2009 review of the Holidays Act, which is where this all started, and it was a tripartite process. It was a review conducted by the government with Business New Zealand and the CTU involved, and the CTU entered that in good faith because one of the underpinning requirements of that review is that the Holidays Act there could be changes to the Holidays Act, but they could not reduce entitlements. That is why the CTU went into that, and actually that sounds really hollow because that's what this bill does. It reduces entitlements. It undermines the 4th week's holiday. It means that, once again, we're going to be having New Zealand workers comparing themselves, comparing their entitlements to what happens in Australia and going, well, it's looking pretty good over there. Because Australian workers have had 4 weeks leave since 1974. New Zealand workers have only had it for a couple of years. Now, our objection to the 4th week's leave, the cashing up of the 4th week's leave, is the whole thinking and reasoning behind adding a 4th week's leave after 30 years of campaigning for it. The whole thinking behind that is that New Zealand's workers should have a fundamental right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation on working hours, and hey, they don't have that very often, and holidays on pay. And this undermines that. That is a fundamental human right, actually. Putting the 4th week's leave up for sale is like saying, oh, well, people can trade off the minimum wage. Actually, we'll give you a few more hours and you can have a bit less. These are minimum entitlements, Mr Speaker. They should not be tradable. They should not be. The option to sell the 4th week's leave, apart from the fact that we're concerned it's going to be forced on the most vulnerable workers, it will become part of the employment agreement when they're in their first 90 days trial. That's what's going to happen. Look, we're going to put it in with the pay. But it will inevitably lead to the degrading of the 4th week's leave. It'll become something that becomes optional. Over time, it will degrade it. And then the question has to be asked, Mr Speaker, well, if workers, if they're able to cash up 1 week's leave, why not 2? Why not 3? It's something. Why have holidays at all, actually? We'll just give them the money, just to have the money. Because actually, that would be really good, because then employers would never have to worry about having workers off on leave. The other thing that I object to about this provision is it will replace wage increases. That is the truth. That workers are going to line up and ask and request their employer to be able to cash up their leave because they haven't had a wage increase. Now, what's been happening to wages in New Zealand? We just agreed. That's right. Wages in New Zealand have hardly moved under this government. In fact, they've gone backwards in many, many cases. Minimum wage workers only got a miserly 25 cents an hour in the last minimum wage increase. There's another one coming up soon, and I hope the Minister's going to be a little bit more generous this time round. But, where workers don't get a pay increase, they're going to go, oh, well, that extra week's leave, the cash for that's looking pretty good. It's worth 2%. That's right. That's true. And, one of the things the Minister could have thought of was putting a provision in here to make it so it's not able to be substituted for a wage increase. That's what we did in the KiwiSaver bill, remember? But I think that government removed it. And finally, Mr Speaker, just quickly on this medical certificate, that is the most silly provision. And I really, it caused outrage and anger. People are still outraged and angry about it, but it was also, people couldn't believe how silly it is and what difference it's going to make. It'll make a difference to workers who have to go off and find a doctor when the doctors are already full and we haven't got enough. But it will not change absenteeism. And in fact, we have a problem with workers. The big problem we have is workers who go off to work when they're ill because they can't afford to take the day off. This is going to bring fear to workers. They're going to be worried about taking that day off because of the real hassle.
It's just a cold.
Well, it could be just a cold, but they're still going to have to go and get a doctor's certificate. This has been ridiculed, this provision, and I honestly thought the Minister would actually see sense and withdraw this provision, because who knows who made it up.